hashtag Ask Scott. How emotional of a segment was it for you during Smoky Mountain Wrestling when you finally unmasked? I remember that segment very vividly. It was
me too. Me too.
I think we've spoken about this segment on here before with Jim Cornette, and it was a great segment.
So that segment had been a year in the making. I mean, the year earlier is when Cornette sat me down and my father and laid out the entire year of booking. And, nowadays we talked about that. Nowadays you just don't see that. But he said, I'm going to have you wear the mask. You will be a character. You will be Dixie Dynamite. And he said, it'll be like a kid's gimmick or whatever. And he said, we're going to get you over with the kids, and you'll be early on the shows, first couple of matches. And he said, we want to establish you. The entire time that we're establishing you on TV, we're establishing your dad as the figurehead of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, the commissioner. And so he said, we'll do things over time. He said, you'll just keep chugging along through the year. You'll get, you'll win on TV and whatever. And we'll push Dixie Dynamite. But in the main event stuff, we will always include Bullet Bob as the official, the head guy with Smoky Mountain. If he said somebody's suspended, by God, you don't see them. You know what I mean? So, so he said at the, about the year mark, it will intersect where Jim would come into play, and he calls me on it and says, Scott Armstrong, I know who that is under that mask. That's Scott Armstrong. And he wears that mask because he's so ashamed that his dad is Bob Armstrong. And dude, I'm going to tell you something. You don't say stuff like that in the South. You didn't back then. And so
for sure.
So literally before that segment, Cornette came and just me and him. And he told me, he said, hey, I want you to think everything that I just explained on this podcast is exactly what he told me. He said, look, this is the culmination of all of it to get to this point to where we end up doing the Armstrong's Army against Cornette's, I don't know, crooks or whatever they were. And so he said, I want you to think about this before you cut this promo, because he and I were doing the promo, and then my dad was going to come in to break it up. And so he said, I want you to think about that. And I want you to think in your heart, how would that feel if he said, look, I know it's a TV show, but how would it feel if somebody looked you in the eye and said, yeah, you wear that mask because you're ashamed of your dad. He said, I know you, and I know your family, and I know how y'all, all the boys, feel about your dad. And he said, so I know y'all are all tight. So I want you to think about that. Well, I started thinking about it, and it was emotional. It was like, wow, man, I would want to fight. You know what I mean? I would want to fight somebody. And so, but in that segment, I couldn't do that. All I could do, and ended up getting a lump in my throat and tried to really, I felt it. And so I felt like it came across like that on camera. To guys, it would come off as, oh, that's a little nerdy, but to kids, because that was my gimmick. And now we were tying kids in with the adults that had gotten behind my father. You see the picture they were drawing?
Yeah.
The young guy, the guy with the mask on that had the kids following, and the old dude with the adult following. And now you tie them together. And not only do you tie them together, it's family. Holy crud, man. You can't get any more babyface than that. And that's the mind of Jim Cornette. It was all his idea. And we went, man, that, a year earlier, that's going to be fun. And it was, man. We had great times. I know I just told the story a week or so ago about the fireworks. That was Smoky Mountain, man. It really was. It was great. I mean, we loved it. But anyway, I hope that answers Donnie D's question.